Hi, and welcome to the last in my series, It's Okay to Be Bad. And this one is on Aquarius and Leo. And so before I begin, I want to thank everyone who enjoyed this, and I hope you got a lot out of it in terms of learning about astrology, but also more importantly for me, always like actually accepting parts of yourselves or in people you care and love, parts of themselves that up until maybe you saw that video you weren't so keen on. So I hope, and let me know if that is your case. I'd love to hear how this series has helped you. So, but before I go, as every time, I just want to, before I go into the specifics of the Aquarius and Leo and their alleged bad traits, I just want to remind, like a quick reminder of why this is an important approach to life. And in my case, that always means astrology is part of that. And why I think it's an important, it's why it's important to approach, like I say, not just life, but your astrology, your own or other people's astrology, in this way, that it's okay to be bad. So all the traits that typically would be considered, bad, that we reframe that and rethink on how we can actually find beauty and goodness and medicine in them. So it's essentially at the core of shadow work, which is what I always, it's a way of living for me. It's my style of living. And ultimately, the purpose of shadow work is to become whole. And what that means is that there are no part of me, I mean, there are, because I'm not there yet, but I'm walking that path. That's my path. That's my, like I say, my way of living. That every time I encounter parts of me that I don't like, or I didn't know they were there, and then especially if I didn't like them, or if I don't like them rather, to then work on accepting them, and because they are who I am. They're not who I am, but they are part of me. They are part of who I am, right? They're not all I am, obviously. And in doing so, every time I do this, right? I approach, I accept, I look, I find, I make myself, I befriend and I make myself at home in that part of me, and that part of me feels at home in my life, in me, even if not in my life. It might not be something I ever show anyone in particular, because it's irrelevant. It's not to be shown. Not everything is for show, right? But as long as I am good with that part of me, I made peace with it, I made love to it in a sort of symbolic sense, like I love it, right? As long as that's happened, that's integration. If you ask me, that's integration, and therefore, every new thing you integrate, you're becoming more and more whole. And so the beauty of that, the medicine in that, is that the moment we accept part of us, we don't judge that anymore in others, but also, so there is less friction and conflict and all this toxicity. We are less and less source of that for the world around us, but also all those parts that we have now befriended are not turning against us. So we are not our own enemy. We don't self-sabotage as much. And all of this, well, we don't self-sabotage in that particular way or area. And, every step, every time there is something else we then stop self-sabotaging about and with and all that, right? And that makes us a far better person. But it's at peace we are at peace with ourselves. We are more content with ourselves. And in all the new stuff that we have finally given consciousness and awareness to, that up until that point we thought was bad, or we didn't even know, and then found out but we didn't like and all that, right? We found all kinds of new things that we can do with it, and our purpose has become more clear. As they say, many, like Robert Bly has a whole book on it and talks a lot about that. The book, the Little Book of Human Shadow, I think that's what it's called, Robert Bly, and how it's a bag with gold in it, right? It's just that we, until we look at it, it's full of monsters, but it's actually gold. There is so much gold in all of that, and it's all about judgment, and it's all about actually being self-toxic, to consider parts of ourselves, to judge them, right? and to shun them and shame them and all that. Anyway, so that's why this series is close to my heart, because I just wanted every sign, every archetype, and therefore by extension the planetary rules. There's variations, they're not exactly identical, and the house rules to be, so therefore your whole chart, right? To make it to just remove all that stands in a way, that the judgment, the criticism of it, the labeling, the shaming, essentially, the guilt tripping and all that. Okay, so hopefully I was successful. And in this last episode of that series, let's dive into Aquarius and Leo. So I started, I think, talking about this in these terms in my last one, which was Capricorn and Cancer. So I'll stick with that because I like that, and this is what I do. I'm a third line. I mean, I try something and then it works, or it doesn't, and I drop it, and if it works, I stay with it for a while. So this method is actually, I like it, but I only encountered it towards the end of this series, so sorry about that, but you can just apply it, I'm sure. So, which is that a really good way to understand a sign, an archetype, and therefore the planetary rules and the housary rules as well, is to review its place in the natural zodiac, and to understand its place and the purpose and why it's where it is in the natural zodiac. And it just sheds so much light that otherwise, we are in the darkness about. So because of that, I'm gonna start with Leo, even though we're in Aquarius season, and I'm not sure when I'm airing this because it might be a bit earlier, in which case, sorry, and because of some logistics in my life that I'm navigating big time. So it might be a bit earlier that I'm posting this, publishing this. But yeah, so I would usually like to start with the seasonal sign, but because of this method, I think it's actually easier to understand. It's easier to start from that kind of logical place. So, which is that it's the fifth sign, right, from Aries, natural zodiac Aries, fifth sign, which means fifth step in our evolution. And then by extension, the Aquarius sign is 11th. So let's just cover the bad traits, the alleged bad traits. So Leo is stereotypically criticized for being egotistical rather, attention-seeking, domineering, bossy, glamorous, glitzy. It's all about the appearances, high maintenance, right? Where Aquarius is allegedly bad traits, and it's criticized for stereotypically, is that it's aloof, it's detached, it's impersonal, too liberal, non-committal, non-conforming, being contrary just for the fun of it or just for the sake of it, right? So those are the kind of themes that I'll be exploring here in this video, as in explaining why that's actually correct for those signs. So back to the zodiac wheel and the fifth place of Leo. So last week I talked about Cancer. Last month I talked about Cancer. In this It's Okay to Be Bad series, and I spoke how it's the time where we are kind of like a toddler, or rather like a child, pre-teens. And I would then argue that we are in Leo, we are kind of like a teenager. And I mean, I don't know. Actually, I'm thinking it could also be a child. So don't worry about too much about that. But more importantly, we only in Cancer, we only, in terms of what we know and what we have encountered, we only know our most immediate family, and in the sense of us making a meaningful connection with and having, they have a meaningful connection. I'll leave it at that. We get to Leo, we step outside of that, and we are still, so we never lose what we've done up until that point. So we have still our family and our neighborhood in the third house, but now this in the fifth house, we are actually meeting ourselves. Hence why fifth house Leo, Sun, so the three corresponding archetypes, are why they're associated with self-expression. It's like we are for the first time aware of ourselves with all that we have all that we have accumulated in terms of our experience and knowledge of the self around us up until that point in our chart, right? So all the 4 signs and what they give us and what they where they push us, what kind of experiences they put us through, right? We have all that in us now, and now we are like, there is so much of us, right, in terms of us as a one self, right, in the sense of self, right? There is so much of us, and we are, it's like, it's time now to do something with it, right? It's time now to play with it, to kind of it's almost like going on a holiday. It's like taking a break. In the 5th house, we take a break from all the shadow work, or from all the evolution, self-evolution that we are undergoing. Not that we are necessarily aware of that as we're undergoing it, but it doesn't, it's like taking a break and just going, okay, let's see, what have we got here? Oh my God, yeah, I have this about me. This is who I am. There is this, and we are infused with this sense of love and curiosity, and but more like it's even more so some like awe, like we are so in awe of ourselves because we're meeting ourselves in that way for the first time. In that it's a glorious journey we've just been on. Think of it as a hero's journey as well. We've been through 4 obstacles in this obstacle course, if that is, and I do consider our zodiac chart, our zodiac wheel, to be that a course of obstacles. Yeah, obstacles course, right? That's in the I think driving tests have that, and you know what I mean by that. I'm pretty sure it's a normal word, right? So, and it's like it's the time to take a break, and that's why it's the house and the sign of the sun is also all stand for like play and fun and hobbies, things we do in our spare time, because now we have spare time, right? And so of course it's the first time we are celebrating ourselves. We feel like the accomplishments that we have achieved up until that point in our journey, all that we have gained and learned and experienced, but also like we are seeing it, like it's like mirror is another great like symbol of Leo, right? And it is, a lot of it is about in the mirror, like looking, wanting to, okay, mirror is also would be Libra, but in this sense that's far more kind of psychological with Libra, and relational. It's about the other, and mirror being the other and all that stuff, right? Meaning you in the mirror is the other and all that, right? All those symbolisms around, the everything around us is the reflection of what's in us, as above, so below, that kind of thing, as inside, so outside. Where with Leo, the mirror is really there as a way of like looking at myself and just seeing myself. In that sense, it's a mirror. It's Leo and mirror are the same metaphor for each other, and it's that sensation, that experience. So, I mean, I don't know how I would be biased by Leo. I think everyone, it's like when you speak of Leo, don't you get this sense, like I feel like so, like, oh my God, it's just, of course, right? It's like, it's like the most, like no one I think can help but love a Leo, because there is so much generosity and warmth. And yes, it's egotistical and it can be bossy. It's a fixed sign. It's domineering. It's like there is so much of this self, and it's aware of it, and it's aware of it in a way, right? It's its priority. That's the priority of that particular step in our journey. So wherever you have Leo, you will be considered. You will encounter these parts of you, these bad traits of you, the egotistical side of you, the domineering, bossy, and I'm thinking of my own, and anyway, think of your own wherever you have it, and you may not have it in the 5th house. And if you do, then it's easier, because then it's like where it should be. So you are, well, again, you can say, so where it should be, because in play and kind of literal play like theater, but also play fun, it's fine, because it's kind of, it's always a bit competitive, hence again, Leo, fire signs. But if it's in romantic relationship, which is another thing of Leo and 5th house and sun, then this kind of attitude is not, doesn't necessarily bear the best fruits, but it's actually, I'll touch on that when I talk about Aquarius. But so it's almost like it's, when you have a muscle, like you're having to, you're doing exercises in order to strengthen a muscle. And so in this metaphor, in this story of Leo, the muscle is the self. And the self needs to be strengthened, because up until this point it was dispersed, it was elsewhere, it was either with the family in the 4th house, or with an environment in the 2nd house, in the 3rd house, sorry, as in Gemini, right? Or in the body in Taurus. There was no concept of self in beyond the body kind of thing, right? And the physicality of one's existence, right? And all that. And in Aries, just pure experience, right? Here, we are flexing the muscle, the self, of that self, like the self-expression self, right? So it's all of this. Now, what do I do with this? Of course, I need to, so it's like the muscle that needs flexing, that needs working. And if it's like you're focusing, you go to physio and they give you like, you're weak in that particular area, i.e. by the time you get to Leo, you haven't got that self. So now you need to strengthen it. So you're only working one leg or 2 legs, or you're just working legs. So that's what I mean. It's domineering. It just gets kind of concentrated in one area, which is the self in this instance, in the self in the sense of self-expression, and like constant, by expression, that's the flexing, and the expression is like domineering. So you're always there, right? Because you have to flex it, right? Okay, I'm gonna leave it to that, because I think I made my point, maybe even overlabeled it. Again, in Leo style, maybe a little bit, but hopefully that's okay. And so the Aquarius piece. So by the opposition, on the other hand, being the opposite, complete opposite, right? So we meet someone who's just, like the opposite of being in your face. They're so away from you, like they're so detached. So aloof, detached, too liberal, like I say, non-committal, non-conforming, contrary, just for the sake of it. And so those are Aquarius traits, allegedly bad traits. So think about the 11th house. So we are now, in fact, 11th house, what I mean, Aquarius in the natural zodiac, but so Aquarius is the 11th sign. And it's actually the sign of individuation. Because it comes after the 10th house, where we have really consolidated this sense of self beyond self-expression, like 5th house, beyond others, 6th house, in 7th house, and all that, right? As in consolidate the sense of self, we are the fullest, but with all the functions the self needs. It's not just about self-expression, and it's always a self-expression of a kind, a part of us that's expressed. So in the 10th house, there will be ultimately the public service, but at that point of ourself, we don't have the need anymore to express ourselves, because we have a part in our life where we probably do that. We do that rather, not probably. There is something in our life that we express on the Leo-like, which would be either our 5th or the Leo house or whatever, meaning we compartmentalize, right? We get to the 10th house and we now have different, and it's a sign of being an adult, right? So you're not in your public role, you do certain only work, and then in your privacy you do something else. Where in Leo, for instance, 5th house or whatever archetype, we will just want to be and do kind of everything and express and play, and just like all these roles that we have in one place, which is typically stage, whether it's in the front room of a family, or in your life, or actually literal stage, because Leo is the archetype of the theater and the actor, playing different roles, right? So in one place, where by the time we get to Capricorn, we have distributed these different selves, and we do them well if we do them well, if we matured well and we learn the lessons and all that, in an ideal scenario. And then we get to so we completed this process, not of individuation, but we completed the process of selfhood, formation of it. And now we have two more signs, right? I keep thinking of houses because, anyway. So 2 more signs. So what happens in the 11th house is we now need to step outside of what we have now built, because that very thing, that requirement, the fact that it exists, such a requirement in our totality, being the chart, means that it gives us this ultimate lesson, it's not the ultimate maybe lesson, but it's the next to ultimate, which is that nothing ever stays the same. We have to keep changing, and therefore no self is ever really fixed. Like even though we strive for so long, you see how it's almost unfair, in a way that we have 10 steps that are teaching us how to form ourselves, and then we have one only step that asks, now scramble this and step outside into the unknown. What else is in you that you want to explore? What other parts of you are there? And so, and you only have one step, and then we have the 12th house, Pisces, and that's I have a video on that, but it doesn't matter, you'll find it. My point being is that that's kind of, we let go of all of that, and we are getting ready for the new cycle. So you see how it's like, in a way you can say we are settled for failure, but really we are just settled for a lot of work, because that's the beauty of being human, Otherwise, it's like, if we want to be like a god or like gods or something who do nothing and just have fun, which is possibly a fifth house, a Leo rather, archetype, very much so, then that, we would get bored, which is the theory behind us on this planet in general, if you ask me, is because that consciousness just wanted to have something, that unifying consciousness wanted to have this experience where we are more than just unifying consciousness. We are all these different stories and egos and all that. So my point is, it's actually not an existence that it's an existence that even unified consciousness, i.e. God, doesn't really particularly have fun with, doesn't like it as much. So the complexity and all this hard work that we're asked to do is because that's fun, actually, even though it doesn't feel like it necessarily, in the Leo sense. And then we get to this one only step, then we have to kind of go, okay, so I now need to step outside of this, because I'm essentially preparing myself for the new cycle. Sorry, so to kind of like wrap up on this, I have kind of gone onto a different tangent here, maybe slightly. So I'm going to come back and say that step is, because it's an absolute requirement, because it's in the chart, right? Means that we have to at that point have in us the ability to detach from all that we have built. Otherwise, there is no movement towards the Aquarius. There is no Aquarius unless we are able to feel aloof, detached, and somewhat distant and impersonal towards all that we have done. By the time we get to Aquarius, it's essential to our survival as a species. I don't know, I love this kind of stuff. Like how astrology gives us the template for making sense of life. So do you get now? So we have 10 steps we have worked towards getting this public self, which is the final step. So we have all been formed, and now we are ready to offer something before then, like publicly, like not just to one, but just to many. And we get to but it's like 10 stages of that work, and only one stage to then go, actually, no, I'm going to leave this because it served its purpose. Now I'm going to get ready for something else, which would then be happening in the 12th house and the Pisces and then Aries. And so in Aquarius, we are practicing, we're living from that detachment. So back to kind of more reality-based storyline here, meaning not too much in the abstract of the astrology. What that means is that Aquarius has this innate sense of it kind of like knows that this is all a theater, but knows. So we get to Pisces and we have we know, but we don't, it's like, okay, I'm not going to go into that now because I'm going to open that can of worms. It's not awareness of ego awareness, logical awareness, mind awareness. That's maybe the best way to put it. So in Aquarius, we have that mind awareness, which we don't have in Pisces because we go beyond mind. That's the kind of distinction I was trying to make. In Aquarius, we have this mind awareness. So we are it's logical to us that it's all of this is just a drama that's playing out, and we are a conscious participant in it. But equally, we are aware of there is that unifying consciousness, because it's like the highest, it's Mercury Uranus rather, sorry, the ruler of Aquarius, and in this way I work with modern astrology, not with the traditional old astrology. So Uranus rules Aquarius, and Uranus is higher octave of Mercury, and to me, amongst other things, this always suggested that Uranus is that our knowledge of the unifying consciousness, like our, and it, I mean, I don't know if it is the unifying consciousness. In fact, I probably would consider that to be the case, simply because at the moment I'm still arguing with myself whether consciousness is mind-like, or whether it's I don't know. So if it is, because we when we speak consciousness, when we say consciousness, we think of, like when when you're unconscious, and then you wake up and you're kind of like, but you always, when you wake up, your mind knows then that you woke up and that you are aware, right? See how the word is so tightly tied to mind. And so that's why I like to think of Uranus as being the closest our mind can ever get to understanding what God is, basically. I mean, again, God is not the word I use because but it's consciousness is, so, but I use it just because it's a shorthand for everyone knows then what I mean, I suspect. So he knows, and that is what gives it detachment. It's like partly why people are religious, so that they have some sense of detachment from what's happening in their lives, so they don't get so the suffering is eased off, because they're not too attached to it. They are, obviously to an extent, but because, I mean, I'm not religious at all, so I don't know even, so I'm maybe talking out of my elbow a little bit, but please feel free to correct me. But being religious and believing in something outside of your immediate experience gives you detachment, and it's what alleviates suffering, that detachment. And so Aquarius is not necessarily religious, and in fact, that's probably, I mean, it can be, obviously, right? It's not, but it's more that knowing. Aquarius is about knowing. It's like, he knows, where religion is often belief. You believe. Aquarius doesn't believe. He knows. And we really truly can know that unifying consciousness without being religious. And again, Eckhart Tolle is one example, and many before him and around him, but is my go-to person. Okay, so this has hopefully helped you understand why this detachment and aloofness is absolutely essential to Aquarius. It couldn't exist if it didn't have that ability really strongly. That muscle is strong in Aquarius, so it's flexing that muscle really well. It stretches it well, and all that of that detachment, because it's required, because we reach our peak of attachment to our form and everything we are, and everything in our lives that we have created in the 10th house Capricorn, and then in Capricorn, right? And then in Aquarius, we need to start detaching. That's why it's essential that they're detached and aloof by nature. And then as for the non-liberal and non-conforming, which are kind of the similar things, this is another piece. It's similar, meaning in the sense that, and when also contrarian. A contrarian is actually a good example of how you flex the muscle of being detached, because essentially what that means, so in order to leave something so well established, Capricorn, right? And it comes after Capricorn, right? So in order to leave everything that's so well established, that we have worked so hard for, again, Capricorn, right? Over a long period of time, Capricorn, right? Now we have to start detaching from that, right? So as I spoke, I think, where did I speak of this? Oh yeah, in Leo, about the physician giving you, to strengthen some of your muscles. So here that being contrarian is flexing and stretching and strengthening that muscle of detachment, because it's like its purpose, Aquarius' purpose, is to shake up the status quo being a Capricorn, or the establishment, right? So it has to be contrarian for the sake of being contrarian, in order to loosen the grip to the established order, right? And then as for the too liberal and non-committal and non-conforming, those are also they're connected, right? So they're like, it has to, I mean, it's an extremely, in a way, lonely place, right? If you think about it. I mean, being at the top of the chart, pinnacle, like, you know, being the archetype of the businessman, which is, or the corporate CEO, whatever, right, is the kind of Capricorn, you know, archetype. There is also a sense of loneliness in that place. Here it's like loneliness only in that transition. And then as transition is being made and kind of, you know, established, and it can get established, but it's a fixed sign, it will get established, but it's a new, it has to remain new. That's the whole point of Aquarius. It has to be so outside of norm for that to never become old. Do you get what I mean? Because in Capricorn, we spend 10 years, 10 steps, you know, establishing something, and therefore it becomes old, right? Because it's that old. It took that long, right? So it becomes old. Where in Aquarius, it has to be so out there, like so weird, so it has to be so different. So the journey, as it's making the transition and it's going towards that, by the time it arrives that, it's still new, right? Because the moment it becomes the norm, it's back to Capricorn. So it has to be such a non-conformist. It has to be non-committal because it has to keep going forward as opposed to committing in a moment, not in a moment, just committing to anything, because that's holding it back and that's slowing down this process. And therefore it only has one sign. Don't forget, right? It only has one sign to do this in, instead of 10 signs. So it has to go far and unobstructed in order to keep it new. That's the whole point. But enough time for that to be the fixed sign, right? Being the Aquarius is fixed, right? It allows for that newness to be solidified in its newness. And that's the art. So, I mean, can you hear the language of this? Can you hear how this is? Okay, I'm a bit over time, but I'll wrap up. Can you see how amazing this is? Exciting. But also how the work, it's weird. Like we have up until Capricorn, we have like step by step. It's like we are held, you know, by our hand every step of the way. There is time to spend on each of the steps. Here in just one step, we have to make that leap, not of faith, of knowing. And that's a difference. Faith comes later, the last piece, the belief where it's beyond mind. I mean, yeah. I have spoken about that, so that's, you don't have to go back to the very first of these videos. I'll don't know if I'll link it below. I'll probably make a playlist actually. Anyway, so yeah, you get what I mean. It's like it's so. Aquarius it's like a Prometheus. Prometheus is another Aquarius archetype, great metaphor for it, right? Is that he did the most audacious thing, Prometheus, like he just took the fire from the gods and gave it to humans. And I mean, that's like leap of the leaps, like just the most extreme, extraordinary, non-conforming, you know, like what's the word when you are departure from the status quo, from the establishment. Well, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I have. Let me know where you stand on this subject and anything, sharing your personal experiences with these archetypes. It's always, I love hearing that. So yeah, just leave me a comment. I look forward to reading it, and I'll see you next week.